everybody. Welcome to the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report. I'm your host, Amy Zawi. Today we have joining us Aaron Fruh, president of Israel Team Advocates, author, speaker, and Bible teacher, here to reflect with us on the issues surrounding the global rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, as well as commemorate the Auschwitz liberation as it is International Holocaust Remembrance Week. Aaron, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Amy. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about you and your organization, and then let's get into some reflections on the Holocaust and what's happening today regarding Jew hatred that's just rampant everywhere.
Right. Yes. So what our organization does, Israel Team Advocates, what we do is we advocate for Israel, the Jewish people, mainly Christian college campuses. So we do conferences. We if God can nullify the Abrahamic covenant, He can nullify the new covenant in Christ. So, we push back against anti-Semitism on Christian college campuses. There's growing polemic. Israel. There's growing liberation theology that's happening on our Christian college campuses. That it's like victim versus victimizer, and so in this case, Palestinian Palestinians are the victim. Israel is the victimizer. So the victim is always right, and the victimizer is always wrong. So what we're seeing on Christian college campuses, whoever the victim is, those are the people that are on the right. So we've got another conference coming at Vanguard University in Orange County, California on March 18th, just about a month and a half away. And then another conference at Wheaton College in September. Yeah, so that's basically what we do. So we write, we publicize, sort of unveil what's happening in the Christian world with the rise, which died off after the Holocaust, which is replacement theology, triumphalism, succession, which has all come back now on our seminary campus. So it's a travesty.
Well, Christian colleges in particular, and what you've noticed and I've noticed, but you're on the front lines of it, is that creeping back in of replacement theology into the teaching and the competing narratives that really disconnect Israel and the Jewish people from the Christian faith. You happen to be in Europe back before the holidays, and you traveled with a group of Wheaton College students to Auschwitz. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because this week is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, is the 27th of January, and that is the day that Auschwitz was liberated. So if you can give us a little bit of a reflection on that time and the importance of that study tour and those students being able to see that in person, and connect that to how that will manifest in a changing of hearts and minds today.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So what we believe is that education, Holocaust education right now is very minimalistic in the United States. So we invested in a tour of with a professor at Wheaton College, Dr. Martin, who's in for Israel, Holocaust studies, Holocaust literature. And so she brought her students to Prague for 4 months to study the Jewish community in Prague during the Holocaust. So they were there, reading all this Holocaust literature, and then our organization, we covered the cost for the students to travel from Prague, Krakow, and Auschwitz for 3 days. Train fare, their food and hotel, because we really believe that being able to see firsthand what took place is very important. So I traveled to Prague with Stuart Roth from the American Center for Longevity. Stuart lectured on what the ACL did, defending Israel at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. 85% of all human rights violations from the International Criminal Court are against Israel. So he lectured about what they do in defending it, and I lectured on the history of Christian anti-Semitism that led to the Holocaust. And when we were in Prague, Stuart and I hired a Jewish historian that took for the Jewish quarter in Prague. Really, it's very difficult to understand Auschwitz unless you know what happened in Europe for millennia of Christian that led to uh, Germans and the perpetrators loading them on cattle cars, sending them. So, walking through the Jewish quarter of Prague, wherever you go, there's a memorial to Jews that were persecuted and murdered hundreds and hundreds of years before Hitler was born, right? And then you jump in a train and you ride down to Auschwitz. Auschwitz is not in the middle of nowhere. It's surrounded by community. The homes there are hundreds of years old. So you realize these people knew exactly what was happening. Uh, so very moving experience. Man's humanity to man, captivating. I was there. It's hard to comprehend how this happened. A friend of mine, Dale Brown, coach basketball. Shaquille O'Neal's coach. He wrote a chapter in the book that you wrote a chapter in. Casualty of Contempt: The Alarming Rise of Anti-Semitism. What can be done to stop it? And Dale talks about his trip to Auschwitz. He couldn't handle it, so he kept saying to himself, "How did this happen?" And he went outside. He leaned his hand on a railroad tie, and there was a plaque that said, "The road to Auschwitz was built by hate, but paved with indifference." That's how it happened. People were just indifferent. There were perpetrators, but then there was bystanders. In occupied Europe, 300 million people, there was, I think, 0.1% of the people that spoke up. 30,000 people out of 300, mainly Christians like Corrie ten Boom, others like Oscar Schindler. I'm not sure where his faith was, but we toured his enamel works factory in Krakow. They did something. They spoke up. They hid Jews. Many of them lost their lives as a result. So a very small percentage. We're seeing that same spirit today within Christianity across the world. Indifference to anti-Semitism, indifference to the war, Hamas's war with the Israelis. So that's what really captivated me when I was in awe. Why didn't a group of Christians stand and say something? People say, well, maybe they were afraid. But where is the moral ethic in culture would lead a person to be silent? And someone once said, "Silence is evil's greatest ally." But the students, great experience, lots of wonderful questions on the bus ride from Osh up to Krakow, and Stuart and I sat in the back of the bus, captivated by the students and their questions. So what it means to me is that education can change, and ideology. We think that anti-Semitism is not, and it's an uphill battle. But think about it. Nazism, that ideology is no more. I mean, there's white nationalists in Germany around the world today rising up against Third Reich and the thousand-year reign of the Nazis ended. So ideologies can change, and I think the hope is education.
So thank you for sharing that. And as you're watching these students make discoveries, and learn, and hopefully their passion to not be silent, but to do and say what they can, how they can, as they is something that is seated in them for the rest of their lives as they go into their careers. But you're also seeing some competing global narratives. We've got the left, the sort of the Marxism, we've got Islamism or radical Islam, and then we've got sort of a rise of that fanatical right that, and you coined a term with this unholy alliance. Why don't you explain that? Tell us that term and explain it, because that is what we as Christians, Bible believing Christians who want to act and do the right thing, what we have to be aware of in order to navigate and know what the enemy is doing to propagate its hate against the Jewish people in Israel.
Yeah, well, October 7th, after the massacre in southern Israel, friends called me and said, within 2 weeks, the narrative is going to shift against Israel. And I said, within 24 hours, the narrative will shift. And sure enough, within 24 hours, there's celebrations in Sydney, in New York, in Los Angeles, across the world. People are celebrating the murder of Jews. And this has been going on within America for 40 years. Our campuses are being seeded with Marxist ideology and Islamic ideology. And a group I work with is ISGAP, which is the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. It's based in Cambridge University in the UK. And ISGAP, your listeners have probably read these reports or heard of these reports. They uncovered a money trail coming from Qatari money, through the Muslim Brotherhood into our universities in the United States. And this money is paying for the hiring of Middle East Studies Department, who are Marxists and Islamists, radical Islamists, that are heading up these Middle East Studies departments in our universities. And, you would think, well, how much money is it? And so far, they have uncovered billions upon billions of dollars that are funneling into our university systems from Qatar. And we wonder how this Marxist ideology, this Islamist ideology has taken root. It's well funded, it's well organized. Texas A&M University, for example, Qatar built a campus for Texas A&M in Qatar. And they own all of Texas A&M's nuclear research. It's given to the Qatari government. Amazing. So ISGAP uncovered all of that. So what we're seeing on our campuses is called the Red and Green Alliance. And green is Palestinian nationalism. Red is Marxism. And so those two have merged. So that's why in 24 hours, right after the massacre in southern Israel, there's rallies supporting Hamas, supporting radical terrorism, turning a blind eye to the murder of 1,200 Jews. And so our campuses today are controlled, for the most part, by the Red and Green Alliance. And what I've started to find on Christian college campuses, and it's what I call the unholy trinity, is a mixture now of Christianity, Marxism, and Islamism. And so I call it Chrislamism Marxianity. So that's the term, Chrislamism Marxianity. So on many Christian college campuses that I travel to, they don't want me to say anything about Islam, about radical Islam. So it's called demi-status or diminitude. It's within Islamic countries. You can live there as a Christian or as a Jew, but you are at demi-status. You must pay a demi-tax to the Islamic government in order to, worship God as you choose fit. And so in America, there's this submission, and that's what Islam means, is submission. There's a submission to Islam within Christianity. And so a lot of Christian denominations are merging Christianity with Islam. It's called Chrislamism. And so they're finding, joint solidarity with the teaching of Islam and the teaching of Christianity. Many of our Christian college campuses New Testament departments teaching more on the Quran than they are on the New Testament. I know that's hard to believe, and I won't mention the campuses this is happening at, but just find a campus and look up their New Testament department. You'll probably find classes on the Quran where the professor has roots in Islam and is talking about the glories of Islam and the purity of the Quran. So we find ourselves in Christianity in a very pivotal point today.
Do you think that what you just mentioned about that Christianism, if I can say it right, is that and the dimitude, is that what did that manifest itself most obviously just recently with the Jerusalem Patriarch statement that came out a week or two ago? I mean, is that sort of an example of those patriarchs coming out?
100%. And those patriarchs, they represent the Greek Orthodox, Latin, Armenian, Coptic, Syriac, Eastern Catholics, and other churches. And so they came out with this statement about a week ago condemning damaging ideologies that are penetrating uh, the Eastern Orthodox churches. And the damaging ideology was they called Christian Zionism. And so as I've researched this, I understand now the issue was not necessarily about the theology of Christian Zionism. It was over a Israeli Arab uh, Christian leader who heads up organization called the Israeli Christian Voice. His name is Ihab Shilan, who is very vocal, and he's a career IDF soldier, officer, and he has thrown his lot in with Israel. And as an Arab Christian, he's defending the state of Israel against radical terrorists and radical Islamists. And so the um, patriarchal church, representing, all those um, groups that I just mentioned, came out with a statement condemning Christian Zionism, but that was not their goal. Their goal, I think, was to condemn Ahib Shalin because it's a bad optic for them that you have an Arab Christian standing with Israel. And so they were trying to silence him. And when he found out about the statement, he came out and said, this is directed at our organization. And I believe that's true. So for this, the churches of the patriarchs in Jerusalem, they are afraid of radical Islamists. And if they don't reject this gentleman, people within their churches they fear will be persecuted. And many of the people that are in their congregations are Palestinian Christians that, for the most part, are probably Palestinian nationalists, believe in the destruction of Israel and believe that Israel is their land. And so, these pastors are giving way to the fear of radical Islam, and so they've completely submitted themselves to the radical Islamists. So I think that's what's going on. And what's interesting is the Latin patriarch. His name is Pier Battista Pizzabella. He didn't sign the document, and nor did the other Catholics. And so that's the good news of the whole thing. So it's basically the Greek Orthodox that led the charge against Christian Zionists, I think, trying to suppress Christian Arabs that have a heart for Israel. So I think that's what's going on, personally.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's the first time I've heard anybody mention any angle of good news out of that analysis. What is a takeaway you would like the Jerusalem Connection Network followers to know about? What is it we need to be praying for? And what is it that we can do just in our own communities that can help just sort of turn this tide? As we're trying to live our Christian faith and and be on the side of God and his people, what is it we can be doing, or would you suggest that we be doing, so that we can make a difference, even on a very small level, even with just one little thing?
Sure. Yes. The article for the Middle East Quarterly. It came out in I think early December, and you can look up. It's free. You can download it for free. It's called Three Reasons Why Young Evangelicals Are Turning Away from Israel. U.S. evangelicals. So I gave my take. There's probably 10 reasons, but I had three. One is deconstructionism. Young evangelicals are deconstructing their faith, and they're rejecting the Christian Zionism of their parents and grandparents. So one thing, it would be a huge thing, is to pray for the next generation, that we get to them. We get to the Gen Z generation, to the millennial generation, because their concern no longer is about the end times. They're concerned about global warming. I mean, the issues of young evangelicals have changed. For your listeners, old listeners like me, what changed my life back in the 70s was a book called The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. It talks all about the end of days and the rebirth of Israel. So my generation and before, they were strong Christian Zionists. We don't have those books today. So young people are not concerned about the rapture of the church, the second coming of Christ. So that's one reason. The next is the growth of woke ideology within Gen Z, postmodernism, where facts don't matter anymore. And the third reason, and this is where your listeners can really jump into this and help. Third reason is biblical illiteracy. Young people are not reading their Bibles anymore, so they have no context of Israel. And there's Marcionianism that's spreading through America today, which is a second century heretic that believed that the Old Testament was no longer, it was nullified for the New Testament. So young people aren't reading the Old Testament anymore, the Jewish scriptures, the Hebrew Jewish scriptures. They're reading, Paul's letters and the Gospels. So they don't have a context of the Abrahamic covenant, the land promise with Israel. And so I would encourage parents, grandparents, um, buy your kids Bibles, your grandchildren Bibles. And there's a new Bible actually that just came out. I don't get anything for this promoting this, but it's called the Action Bible from David C. Cook Publishers. And we gave as Christmas presents to all of our grandchildren. And at Christmas time, I couldn't believe it. All my grandchildren that are at, readers' age, my eldest is 12 years old, they're all sitting on the couch reading their Bibles. This book, Action Bible, is 800 pages. It's like a comic book. It's not comedy, but it's like pictures, right? Of all the great Bible stories, Revelation. And one granddaughter out in California, she's 9 years old. She's already read the entire Bible since Christmas. So we have to engage our children and our grandchildren in the scriptures so that they can have the context of God's covenant with Israel. So that's a great.
Well, that's a beautiful suggestion. And increasing biblical literacy, we need to take that challenge into our own hands, into our own family networks, because the Christian colleges need help getting back to that. And so do the Christian schools, and a lot of times churches that folks go to on Sunday morning. Aaron, we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. We'd love to have you back sometime soon. Your expertise is so valuable, and you just teach so much. And we really value the work that you're doing and your team is doing. We'll continue to pray for it. And really, just thank you so much for all that you're doing and the encouragement that you can give us on what to pray for and how we can be doing something actively tangible in this war against the ultimate enemy, the enemy of God and His people.
Amen. Thanks, Amy. So happy that you invited me on today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and Shavua Tov.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy these conversations, please visit us at www.thejerusalemconnection.us. Find all our podcasts on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast program. Follow us on social media, subscribe, like, and share our content to reach the broadest audience.